I've had a long and fulfilling career, and if there's one thing I would change, it's that I would have continued writing. There was a point where I stopped, and I stayed away from it for years. I became complacent. I lost the motivation to write, and that absence stayed with me longer than it should have. For more than 3 decades, George Strait quietly protected a truth that no one ever imagined. Beneath the flawless image of country music's most respected icon, another reality was unfolding out of view. Even those closest to him had no idea what was happening beyond the spotlight. Now, that truth is finally coming into focus, reshaping everything fans believed they understood. Born George Harvey Strait on May 18, 1952, in the small town of Poteet, Texas, George Strait's formative years were defined by rural rhythms and the steady demands of farm life. He was raised mostly in nearby Pearsall, where his family owned and operated a cattle ranch. Life on the farm was demanding and unforgiving, requiring long hours, physical strength, and an unshakable sense of responsibility. Those values later became inseparable from Strait's character and music. When his parents divorced during his childhood, George and his brother were raised by their father, a junior high school math teacher who balanced education with the daily grind of managing a working farm. That mix of discipline and labor shaped Strait's humility and perseverance, qualities that followed him throughout his life. Music entered Strait's world slowly. As a teenager in the late 1960s, he gravitated toward traditional country music, especially the honest storytelling of Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, and George Jones. While others chased musical trends, Strait found comfort in classic melodies and straightforward lyrics that mirrored real life. He briefly played in a rock and roll garage band during high school, but his heart always returned to country music's emotional truth and simplicity. After graduating from Pearsall High School, he enrolled in college, though his studies were soon interrupted when he joined the United States Army in the early 1970s. Stationed in Hawaii, Strait became part of an Army-sponsored country band known as Rambling Country, performing for fellow servicemen and local audiences. These performances marked his first true experience on stage and quietly confirmed that music was more than a pastime. When he returned to Texas later in the decade and resumed college, he carried with him sharpened instincts and a maturity forged by discipline, distance from home, and a deepened connection to his roots. In December 1971, at just 19 years old, George Strait married his high school sweetheart, Norma Strait. Their marriage began long before fame entered the picture and would become the emotional foundation of his life. Unlike relationships shaped by celebrity, George and Norma built their bond on shared history, trust, and aligned values. Only a year later, in 1972, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jennifer. Fatherhood came early, forcing Strait to grow up quickly while balancing military service and uncertain career prospects. Stability often took precedence over ambition, and those early years were defined more by sacrifice than opportunity. Still, they strengthened his devotion to family. For Strait, family was never secondary to success. It was the core of everything. As his musical ambitions grew in the late 1970s, the demands increased. Long drives, small venues, and modest earnings became routine. Throughout it all, Norma remained steady and supportive, avoiding the spotlight entirely. She valued privacy over recognition, and George honored that choice. Their marriage stood as a rare constant in an industry known for turbulence. In 1981, they welcomed their son, George Bubba Strait Jr., solidifying their family just as George's career began gaining momentum. Even as fame grew, Strait drew firm boundaries between his professional life and personal world. He chose home over nightlife, loyalty over excess, and family over celebrity. That commitment shaped both his private life and the emotional restraint that would define his music. On June 25, 1986, George Strait's life changed forever. In San Marcos, Texas, his 13-year-old daughter Jennifer was killed in a devastating car accident. She had been riding in a Ford Mustang driven by a friend when the vehicle lost control, rolled over, and crashed violently. Jennifer was partially ejected and died instantly. Investigators later confirmed that no one in the vehicle had been wearing seat belts, a detail that deepened the tragedy. For George and Norma, the loss was incomprehensible. Jennifer had been the heart of their family long before fame arrived, and in an instant that foundation was gone. The family withdrew into private grief. Unlike public figures who process tragedy openly, Strait made a deliberate choice to shield his family from scrutiny. In the years that followed, he largely stopped giving interviews, avoided personal questions, and distanced himself from the media. His silence was not indifference, but survival. Music remained his outlet, though even there, emotion surfaced subtly rather than through direct confession. This restraint became a defining part of his public identity. Fame and accolades faded in importance compared to protecting what remained of his family. In 1986, the Jennifer Lynn Strait Memorial Foundation was established to support children's charities, honoring Jennifer's memory quietly and without spectacle. In 1987, less than a year after losing their daughter, George and Norma transformed grief into purpose by co-founding the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation. The organization was created with the same privacy the family valued, focusing on helping children facing hardship, illness, and instability. The foundation became a living tribute, ensuring Jennifer's name represented compassion rather than tragedy. Over the years, it donated millions of dollars to children's causes, becoming one of the most enduring parts of Strait's legacy beyond music. In April 2009, George Strait experienced another loss with the death of his older brother, John Byron "Buddy" Strait, who passed away at age 58. Buddy had shared George's rural upbringing and witnessed his life long before fame. Losing him meant losing one of the last connections to his earliest self. As with other losses, Strait grieved privately, reinforcing his belief that grief does not require an audience. Following Jennifer's death, Strait made a defining decision to choose privacy over publicity. At a time when fame demanded personal access, he withdrew. He avoided talk shows, limited interviews, and let his music speak for him. His concerts became the primary space for connection. Over time, this restraint earned him respect, redefining success on his own terms. In 2024, George Strait entered another emotional chapter. That September, he released the album Cowboys and Dreamers, shaped by reflection and loss. During its completion, he lost 3 pillars of his touring life. On March 20, 2024, longtime fiddle player Gene Elders passed away, followed the same day by legendary manager Irv Woolsey. Weeks later, on April 29, road manager Tom Foote also died. These were deeply personal losses. The album was dedicated to their memory, honoring friendship and loyalty rather than public grief. In April 2025, Strait faced